your business looks solid on the outside, but feels fragile when you really look at it, you're not alone. Most founders are building businesses that are structurally set up to work against them at the moment things get complicated. This episode is for ambitious founder who is building something meaningful but senses that they might be carrying too much risk. We will explore how to protect everything you build before life or business pressure test your structure. Welcome back to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Dahya. Most founders are busy building. They're focused on growing fast. They are often not thinking about what could go wrong. Sometimes the real threat is not the lack of growth, it's poor structure. A business can look successful but fragile. One dispute, one health issue, one unexpected moment, and the founder can realize they did not protect what they built. Scherrie L knows this. She helps founders make sure that they are building wisely. She helps them align their business structure with their agreements, their exit strategy, and her insight, like mine, comes from experience. She has lived through losing everything. She has rebuilt. She went to law school and understands how to build a business that can handle the pressure. This conversation is about protecting your dream before the storm hits. Scherrie talks about the four-corner foundation of your business. It's about checking the four key areas before you make any big moves, like bringing on a partner, taking investors on, or even exiting. First, ownership. Do you know who owns what? It's all written down properly. Second, control. If something happened tomorrow, who would make the decisions? Third, continuity. Does your business have a plan for disputes, or does everything stop if you're not there? And fourth, exit. Even if you're not, do you know what your business is worth? Scherrie says that most founders can only answer one or two of these questions. She suggests that listeners score themselves on each one of these after the episode. See where you're strong and see where you might be exposed. And that's a good place to start. Scherrie, it's great to have you on the Champion Mindset Collective. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Likewise, I am too. Scherrie, I'd love for you to share your journey in life from childhood to now. Tell us how you got here.
Well, look, I'm going to start in Louisville, Mississippi, in the States on a 150-acre farm. I lived with my grandparents for a period of time after my mother became sick and passed away, and loved it. Just absolutely loved it. We had cows and pigs. Now, I don't remember the chickens, but they said at one point my grandparents had chickens, but it was truly a farm experience. Everything from drinking out of the water hose and walking around barefoot growing up. But when they passed away, they did not have a will or a trust. And so that was my first encounter with why estate planning is so essential. There was a huge probate battle between my aunts, myself, my brother, and my uncle, in terms of who would get what and where it was going to be as it related to their property. Fast forward, I had two businesses that failed. And at the age of 30, I have a 6-month-old and a 3.5-year-old, and I had lost everything that I had built to that point and decided to go to law school. So it really was an inflection point at that time that I really thought about a pivot, because it's not just me. I have these two little people. And that's how I started helping entrepreneurs merge their business plan with their estate plan.
Wow, what a journey. Growing up around in a farm environment and then losing everything and then having children as well. Scherrie, you talk about the four-corner foundation for protecting your business, and it feels practical. So for many founders, though, thinking about ownership, control, continuity, and exit planning can feel overwhelming, or something they'll think about doing later on. What is the emotional shift that needs to happen for a founder when they move from I'll get there eventually to I need to make this a priority right now?
Here's the thing. When you mention those, they do not necessarily have to be addressed in that order. Exit planning should be day zero before you even get started. It's kind of like knowing that you need to go to the grocery store, putting together a list and deciding which store you're going to. Before you start your business, you need to know what your exit is going to look like. Are you starting a business so that you're going to, make it as profitable as possible? And then 5, 7, 10 years, are you going to sell it? Is it a family business that you're going to pass on to the next generation? Is it something that you're doing until retirement age and you plan on selling your shares to other shareholders or investors? So all of those things, they're not in any particular order, but they are all so important in terms of the lifeblood of your business.
So in your own journey, how did you come up with this four-corner foundation And how did you apply that as you started your business?
A lot of it is basically from business school. Before I went to law school, I went and got my MBA. And so a lot of these are just business principles. And then actually in practice, these are some areas that in my early businesses I failed at. And this was before I went and got my MBA. And so once I got the formal education behind it and I started to apply those things in practice, I kept seeing a recurring theme. It's like, okay, all the case studies that we studied in business school, they talked about control. They talked about ownership. We looked at continuity studies. And so the exit piece was further, probably after business school. And I started looking more at the legal side of it and the implications. But that's how I came up with it, just really from case studies and my own experience.
What does that do it later mindset usually cost people?
A lot of people understand what ROI is, okay, but they don't understand what COI is, the cost of inaction. We think that if we just put a decision off, that it's not costing us anything, but it could be costing you everything. Give you an example. I had one client who passed away, and the guy had been a client for a while, older guy. And when he passed away, his wife came to me because she wanted to go ahead and start probate. Well, this gentleman did not have a will or a trust. So it was going to be intestate, which means that he basically did not have a plan. We were just looking to transfer his assets legally. And his wife thought that she had this huge inheritance because he was a very successful HVAC tech during his lifetime. Well, he was successful in terms of how much money he brought in, but he was the business. He did not have any employees. So when he passed away, the business died with him. Even though he did have a legal structure, he had an LLC, he didn't have any reserves, he didn't have any sort of insurance outside of a life insurance policy to bury him. And so it was disappointing for her to hear that she did not have any inheritance because he's not there and he was the business. So a lot of this, when you look at exit planning, your exit could be your death. It could be a bankruptcy reorganization. It could be the end of a partnership or a merger. And so those are all the different lenses that you have to look at when you're considering something like that.
There's a lot of people who are solopreneurs or entrepreneurs who work by themselves. What does it mean for them who may not have a business partner to leave the business so that it keeps running? What would you say to people in those situations?
I would borrow a page from Stephen Covey and say, begin with the end in mind. So you don't have a business partner? No problem. Who makes the business decisions for your business if you are incapacitated or if you pass away? You have to look at a will, a trust, or sometimes you don't need either. If you have a very small personal estate, then you can do transfer on death beneficiaries for your bank accounts. You can do that for your vehicles in most places. And for your home, you can do a transfer on death deed or a life estate deed, which means that you still get the benefit of your homestead exemption and you get to live in that property while you're alive. But the minute you pass away, it goes to the person you designate and you can avoid probate altogether. So the short answer is start with your will, your trust, or your beneficiary designations, because that's going to control what happens to your business. Heaven forbid you don't have a partner. Your employees may not want your wife making business decisions. You should have a designee, and that designee should be spelled out not only in your business documents, but also in your personal documents. And I think it's also important, Anthony, we need to point out, because a lot of people will designate a power of attorney during their lifetime. Well, that expires when you pass away. So someone cannot act as your power of attorney if you are dead. You clearly need a succession plan in that event.
How does the shift tie into protecting their personal identity and peace of mind?
Oh my gosh. Okay, think about this. If you have employees and something happens to you, they need to know they're going to get paid. Your creditors, your vendors, your contractors, even your partner, depending on how the business is set up, they need some sort of security to know that the business does not stop with you. Not even just with money, with decision making. Could you be the bottleneck in the business? Are you the person that everybody comes to for final answers? If you're not around, what happens to the continuity of your business? And so it's not always death. Sometimes it's disability. You may be able to speak and talk, but maybe you have limitations that do not allow you to function the way that you used to. Have you planned for that? And a lot of this is not expensive at all, but it just takes time and thought, and it takes a review. So even if you've done this before, I encourage people, look at it at least once a year with your partner and or your family to make sure that nothing's changed.
Yeah. Now, you've experienced significant challenges in your own journey, including 2008 financial crisis. How did your personal experiences shape your perspective on the importance of these structural foundations, and what did you learn about resilience through that time?
I would first ask, how much time do you have? There's so many lessons, so many lessons. But the main thing is this: you can almost never be overprepared. Like, there's nothing that I can say about how underprepared I was. Because here's the thing. Yes, I lost everything. And there were certain people that were in the same business I was in, doing the same things, and lost nothing. The difference is they were able to forecast what was coming. And I was so busy working in my business that I was not able to see the trends in the market. So as
Mm,
the market shifted and things began to get bad, I noticed that the business started to decline, but I was not able to be as proactive as some other people who came out a lot better because everybody did not lose everything in the crash. So the thing that I learned the most is to always be prepared, to forecast, and not to just have a plan A or a plan B, but a plan A, B, C, and D for what could happen. No,
mm,
seriously, because I was making great money during that time
mm,
and I reinvested a lot of it. I didn't have enough reserves. We were expanding rapidly. Even though I was based in Mississippi, we were able to do loans in 40 plus states. And so there was a period of rapid expansion, but not enough foresight in terms of reserves. And I was not able to pivot quick enough. And so always be prepared, have reserves, and to look around and pay attention to what the market is doing.
mm. And what were some of the other lessons that you had along that journey?
Personally, some of the things that I learned, and I did not have a partner, but in this instance, that may not have been a terrible thing, not having a partner, because the paperwork I had was at that point was in place, even though that was before law school. And this was like my second or third business. The first business with a handshake. And Anthony, we got to get back to that one because that's a good story. This business was paperwork wise because it was a regulated industry was in place. So sometimes even when things look like they're going well and you have everything wrapped up, you really may not have everything wrapped up. So when you are looking at business, it's always good to diversify. Never have all of your eggs in one basket. Look at horizontals and verticals to the industry that you're in, because sometimes that can be the moat around your business. One thing that I do with my clients, I teach them how to build a moat around their business. And what that is not just your paperwork. It is your standard operating procedures. There's the training programs that you have with your staff. And it's also those paperwork and relationships that keep your business afloat even during hard times.
Yeah, you've got to be prepared in all those areas of your business and in your life as well. Take us back to that story that you were going to tell us.
Okay. So the very first business I had, met a gentleman during a leadership program. Hit it off. Like, hey, I think we'd be great for business together. So on a handshake, we started an advertising company and it was going well. We had employees, we had contracts, business going great. One morning, his wife walked in and said, I'm your new partner. Yeah, I'm your new partner. And so I'm like, I don't think so. But we did not have a single sheet of paper between us that memorialized our agreement. And, when you start a partnership, you do it because you trust someone. And there's something about it that's mutually beneficial to the both of you. Well, I don't know what happened between him and her, but he gave her his portion of the business without even consulting me. And that for me was a deal breaker. So now we're having to go unwind these contracts. We're having to figure out who's going to keep the employees, who's going to keep the physical space. And it was very hard, early 20s, and it was a profitable business. It was not anything that we could have forecasted would have happened. Like, if you would have told me or given me 10 different scenarios on how that partnership would end, I would not have considered that as one because business wise, we were doing great. So now one of the lessons that I learned when I counsel people, especially if they have partners before they start the business, we talk about spousal consent agreements. And it's pretty much a prenup between your spouse and your business that governs their rights in the event of your disability or your death. Or even if you want to sell the property, there are certain rights that they waive in favor of the business so that there's business continuity and employees, investors, and partners still feel confident to go forward.
Wow.
Yes, a handshake,
What was it?
a handshake.
Yeah, yeah, and there was no communication at all. It was just she turns up and says, "I'm your partner."
Well, and here's the thing, in hindsight, that man was probably trying to keep his life at home happy. And he was like, is
Yeah.
you going to be happy or is my wife going to be happy? And I like, today, that was 20 something years ago. Today, I get it from his perspective. I'm not sure what precipitated that conversation, but from my perspective, I was totally unprotected.
Mm.
And to him, it was like, okay. And he had several businesses. This was my only business, my first business at the time. He had several businesses. So from his perspective, he was checking both boxes, peace of mind at home, and I don't have to deal with this anymore.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
always protect yourself and keep more paper than less.
Yeah. And what was going on for you at that time when you had to rebuild?
Okay, which time? The first business or before law school? Because I am the rebuilding queen at this point.
Yeah. Maybe give us a bit of information about both of those.
Yeah, the first
Yeah.
time was not so bad because, yeah, we had a handshake business, but I was very blessed in my early 20s before I even had children. I had like multiple rental properties, I had my real estate license. So when the partnership broke up, we basically just started two different versions of the same company. I kept the name and kept moving, and he rebranded and moved somewhere else. So that was okay, was not so bad. When I turned 30 and the market crashed and it was what, '08, that was kind of terrible because mentally I did not understand how I got there. And I was a single parent, Anthony. Single parent, had done all the things. At this point, I'd been to business school. I'd had that first failed partnership and I thought I had learned the lessons. Everything with the business was like it was supposed to be, but I just was not able to see the market doing what it was doing. So it took me about a year with zero income and these two little people to figure this plan out, go to law school and to reboot.
Mm. How did those tough lessons change the way you advise founders today?
I talk to founders now more about calculated risk. When things are going great, sometimes you can be a little cavalier in terms of how you make decisions. But I believe no matter what your industry is or your business, there are some universal truths in all of them. And you talked about those four corners: ownership, continuity, control, and exit. And so I try to work with founders on being creatures of habit as it relates to being good stewards of checking those things and checking in, and also not working with their professionals in silos. One thing that I love is when I can get a founder to get all of their strategic partners together. What does that do? That puts everybody on the same page. Even if you are a small business or a solopreneur, you have right now someone that you're paying an insurance premium to, right? You have a banking relationship. You have someone that is preparing your tax returns or maybe advising you on your taxes. So part of what I also do is get those people together, usually not in a room, like on Zoom, at least once a year. And instead of taking soloed advice, we get everybody on the same page about where the company's going. So for small businesses who think that I don't have the resources to do this, well, these people are already servicing you, but now they're being of service to your business and helping you move out of that bottleneck position so that you can take those vacations and do things and work on the business and not in the business.
Yeah. Many founders are brilliant at their craft, but the legal structure side of the business feels like a foreign language. It can be confusing for a lot of people. How can we make these critical conversations about ownership, control, continuity, and exit feel rather than a lecture, but more like a essential growth strategy?
Part of it is getting founders to understand you don't have to know everything. You just need to know who to call. And
Mm.
so just like how we just got finished talking about strategic advisors, a lot of this information, like even with your structure, yes, when you first get started, you may have selected, like, I'm going to be an LLC, but now you've grown some or you've learned something new. Any decision you make in business is not fatal. You can always pivot. But if you set things up the right way, the pivot is going to be so much easier. There are times that I may be designing an estate plan for someone, or I may be putting together a business structure. Now, I don't give tax advice, but I work with your tax professional and we make sure that we are capturing all of the risk on the tax side because I may design something that may have adverse tax consequences. So I work with your tax advisor to make sure that your withholdings, opportunities for credits and not just deductions are available to you based on what I'm designing for you. And if you're lucky enough to get someone who does tax planning for you, that's the person I love to talk to because we set up structures, not just for today, but for tomorrow, 3, 4, 5 years out, because that's the person that knows what sort of liability you're looking at going forward. And so just because you establish a legal structure today, it can change, it can grow. You can divest yourself of certain things. So you don't have to know everything. So when we're talking about having these conversations, I try to encourage people, let's not just have a conversation one on one. Let's plan quarterly meetings with your strategic advisors. And that way, it's not a conversation that sounds as scary because you're empowering those people that are already working with you to help you make some of these decisions. And you're giving them conflict waivers so that they can work without you. And that really removes you from being that bottleneck as well.
And for you to be able to give this sort of advice and design a plan for them, what sort of knowledge but also learning have you had to equip yourself with to be able to do this?
So a lot of it, you don't, and okay, I will say this. I'm a licensed attorney in Mississippi, so I give legal
Mhm.
advice in places that I'm licensed. But anywhere else that I'm working with founders, I'm like your quarterback for your strategic advisors, and I'm showing them which plays to run based on what your goals are. So some of this stuff, you don't have to be an attorney to do. You just have
Mm,
to know which attorney where you live is available to help you get some of this stuff set up properly based on the law in your area. In my particular instance, a lot of this stuff I learned even before law school. After I finished
mhm,
my MBA, I had a lot of this knowledge. Once I went to law school and got deeper into it, I really understood more how the law worked. But I'm always trying to figure out better ways to make my company better. But
mhm.
more so of it, I guess during my MBA in terms of formal training.
Yeah. And what is one of the common mistakes that founders make when the moment they start thinking about this kind of things, and also that actually adds more risk?
That they can do everything with one entity. So you think that, okay, I'm in business, I have one LLC, I'm going to run my trucking company, my beauty salon, and my cupcake shop all out of that one entity. And so you introduce so much more risk when you add more activities. One of the very basic things that you can do, anyone can do, um, when you start a business, even if the business has been in operation for years, you need to separate your operating activities from your assets. Operating activities from your assets. Anywhere that you are operating, you have the ability to be sued because you're serving somebody. Okay. Assets need to sit somewhere where there's no active activity. That means that people cannot get to them. So I try to have at least a 3 entity structure for every single founder that I work with. The very top is your umbrella. That's your will or your trust. And then you have one entity that holds your assets and another entity that holds your operations. And that's very minimally. Some people may feel like, well, Scherrie, I don't have a lot. Well, you're going to have even less if somebody sues you and they take the little bit that you think you have. And it's not about what you have today, because there are ways that you can leave a legacy for your family with insurance and investments after you pass away. And you may have, be in the red every day of your life while you're living in your checking account, but you may have an insurance policy that pays into your trust. Well, you don't want to make that attractive for claims. So that's one of the biggest things is just separating assets from operations.
And what's a simple non-legal action a founder can take this week to start addressing one of these corners?
So non-legal, this is more financial. Just reviewing your beneficiary designations.
Mm,
I had one client passed away. He had been married 3 times, and wife number 3 thought she owned XYZ, and he had not taken wife number 1's name off of some of the assets. And so that's non-legal. It's just a review. And I would do that anyway every year because, you have children, you have grandchildren, you get married, you get divorced. And so just reviewing that to make sure that your assets are being left to the people that you want them to be left to.
mm. And what about the founder who feels that they cannot afford this kind of protection yet?
Can't afford not to.
Mm,
So, I mean, really, and I know that sounds cliche, but think about it this way. When you are building your business, You have a plan for utilities. You have a plan, hopefully, for marketing, a plan for employees. You should be budgeting anywhere from, I think, 1% to 3% for legal fees. And that's not so much for litigation, to review contracts and things like that. So this should be a part of your budget. If you're in business, you need to act like a business owner. And this is a business expense as well. It's tax deductible. And I don't think that there's enough value placed on how important this is in terms of prevention and something
Mm.
possibly happening because you have a bad contract or you get in litigation.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice there, Sherry. Now, the idea that you're one crisis away from a potential disaster is a powerful wake-up call for anyone, but it can also be a little scary. How do you help founders navigate that tension, moving from the place of a potential fear or overwhelm to feeling empowered and intentional about building a business that lasts?
The truth is that you can never really erase all possible fear or bad outcomes, but you can always plan around it. And so a little bit of fear is healthy because it keeps you alive. One way is to make sure that you're observing formalities. We talked about making sure that your governmental paperwork is in order. There's a thing, Anthony, called piercing the corporate veil. So if your paperwork is not in order and someone sues you, they can show the court system that, hey, this isn't a real business. This is just a hobby. So I should be able not only to get a judgment against this person's business, but now I should be able to reach into their pockets, their personal money with their personal name on it, and get something out of their pockets as well. So you never want to be in a situation to where the moat around your business and your personal assets is not strong enough to fight off a claim for what's called piercing the corporate veil. Because if you really did make a decision in your business that it could have been an honest mistake, you don't want that to affect you being able to care for your family, to pay your mortgage, to pay your car notes. But that can definitely happen.
And do you have any stories you could tell us about where this kind of thing has happened?
Yes. So I have one client who is a real estate investor, very successful, has over 400 single family homes across 3 limited liability companies. Now, sounds great, doesn't it? No, not across 3 limited liability companies. Each property should have its own LLC. But the investor decided that that was too expensive and too cumbersome until he got a default judgment against one of those. So what happens? Because the judgment runs with the land. Everything in that one LLC had that judgment on every single property. And so when he went to go sell one of those properties, that's when he found out about the judgment. It was a default judgment. And he got the default judgment because he was sued and did not get notice, so he did not come to court. So we are actually still in court right now about that. And during that time, we got the default judgment lifted. But just imagine if a third of your assets were encumbered by a judgment based on one mistake you could have made. And the fact that we're still in court, they have not decided not guilty against liability because it's civil, but that has not been decided yet. So you always, even if it looks like it's cumbersome or expensive, do you see how that one mistake has a third of his assets tied up indefinitely?
Mm, yeah, yeah. So there was one piece of land, you said, and there was how many properties on there? 400.
Well, he has a total of 400 properties. I want to
Yeah.
say that maybe like a third of those were in that one LLC because one of the tenants had an incident and sued, but she sued the company that owned the property. And that
Mm,
company owned almost, I think, a third of his properties. And so all of those are tied up with that same lien.
mm. So it is, if you're thinking about that, like if every single property had a LLC, it is quite a bit of admin work. It's quite a bit of work, right? How does someone manage that?
Well, yes and no. Because here's the thing. If you know that you're going to be a real estate investor, I think that there are certain things that you need to build into your system. You need to build in the fact that each one of your properties is going to have an LLC, the administrative, work. And when you say work, if you have it set up, that's one thing. And then
Mm,
really it's just annually updating your local secretary of state or whatever that agency is where you are with an annual report. It's not that it's so much work, but I
mm.
think that you need to mentally put that on and physically put it on your checklist that this is, part of this process and the ownership.
Yeah.
Another part of it, because some people, when they find out they're being sued, they start transferring things out of their name. Well, a court can unwind that. I don't know if you're familiar with fraudulent transfers. So if I get sued, well, now it's almost too late for me to start taking everything out of my name and giving it to you, Anthony, so they can't get to it. You need to have that done prior to. So a lot of the planning that, having a separate LLC for each property, that's what that is. So only that property is affected.
And what is the difference between a healthy caution and letting fear drive your decisions?
Basically, if you are reacting to everything, that is very unhealthy. I think that all great business leaders have healthy fear, which means that they're always evaluating new opportunities. They're looking at risk. And when we talk about risk, we're not just talking about competitors and external risk. Part of building a moat around your business is just looking internally. Am I treating employees fairly? Am I protecting company data? Um, are there opportunities for, if I have a brick and mortar location where it's a safe environment? Because all of those can turn into claims against the company, which dilute your revenue, your goodwill, and your reputation in the market. So it's so much more than legal stuff when we're talking about that moat around the business.
Yeah, so it can impact you in many different ways. Yeah. And what does true peace of mind look like for a founder once these structures are in place?
I say it varies for everybody, but being able to step away and work on the business. If your business can run without you, I would think that's true peace of mind. Because think about it, most entrepreneurs, they don't want to just earn another job. They don't want to, start a business and they just create another job for themselves. You can go work for anybody and work 7 days a week. And I think it does not look like hustle culture because, some founders wear it as a badge of honor. Oh, I work 7 days a week. I work 18 hours a day. I hustle. I got 16 side gigs. To me, that is not peace of mind. Peace of mind is being able to walk away. Peace of mind is being able to grow with the people that work with you and bring them along with you. I think that would be peace of mind for me.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm a solo entrepreneur, right? And running this podcast is like, what happens if something happened to me? And I've got a whole lot of guests in the pipeline and all these different things happening. How would I manage that? Also, with my AI business, it makes you think about what is the plan when you may not be here on a given day, and who's going to look after that and who's going to take it forward, I guess.
One thing that I would say for solopreneurs and especially creators, I don't know that creators really know the value of their IP. For you, for instance, you have all these digital assets. Each individual podcast that you produced has value. The podcast itself has value. Your estate, your family, they could sell the brand to another podcaster who can then take it, run it under the same name, and do several things with it. So even if you're a solopreneur, this has value. If you're not here, that's okay because this is not Anthony's podcast. It's the Champion Mindset Collective. So even if you had special guests that come on, like think about the late night shows when we were growing up. If they took a break or went on holiday, they would have guest speakers come in. So there's so much value there. So even with your estate plan, I would consider what happens to your logo, what happens to the actual digital assets, because, if they're on YouTube, they live forever. And once they reach a certain point, YouTube starts paying you money per view. So what happens to the money per view if you're no longer here or you decide that I don't want to do this anymore? So those creators can really consider.
Yeah, that's really great advice for creators in that way. And yeah, I hadn't really thought about the fact that the brand could be sold off to another podcaster or another creator.
Yeah, and not only the brand, the URL. It used to be like back in the early 2000s and 2010s, phone numbers were selling at a premium. So if you were like a law firm and you retired, you had other law firms trying to go into bidding wars to get your number so that if somebody called that number, they just say law office. They didn't have to say your law office. They'd be like law office and you would get the business from those attorneys. Same thing with your URL. Even if they did not continue your name, but you had a lot of traffic, they can redirect it to their podcast. So that in and of itself has value.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are your thoughts about we're in this digital age of AI and technology, and like information is readily available, right? Some people may think about it and go, well, I could take a shortcut and actually get AI to write something for me. What are your thoughts on that?
So, Anthony, I'm going to share with you a horror story that I experienced personally. At the time that we're recording this, we're like mid 2026, but the end of 2025, I was out for a while with medical issues. And so I had someone who was working with me in my office and they were preparing things on my behalf. Now, we use AI in my office a lot. I do a lot of legal descriptions. So instead of having to type all those, we'll get AI to type them based on the vesting deeds and just, we use it as a tool. Okay. This person used it using some of the standard operating procedures that we have, but I did not check it properly and they did not take out some hallucinations. So I have several things during that time that were submitted to the court that are wrong. And so it's like, well, that's so horrible. Do you stop using AI? No, AI is a tool. I think that we need to have better protections in place,
Mm,
better rules. But I don't think that AI is bad, even though I'm still at this time cleaning some of that stuff up. But I think it's a tool. And I just think we need to be responsible with it and we need to be diligent because sometimes AI can be an echo chamber. You put something in, you can't depend on every single thing it says when it comes out. And in this instance, I should have checked some of that stuff. But being out, I really trusted this person. And Anthony, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop using AI, but I'm going to use it
no.
more responsibly. And you have to use it ethically as well. So yeah, use it as a tool and use it to innovate because even some
Yeah.
of the things that we automate, like with email and stuff in our office, it moves so much quicker than having to manually go through some of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's a tool, just like anything else we've used in the past, and we have the opportunity to use it. But like you said, use it responsibly and ethically, and make sure that you're always checking things before you're actually sending it off somewhere. Yeah. And for example, the the podcast that I run, this podcast, a lot of the interactions are automated. I don't have to type out all those emails because there's standard templates that are saying, hey, thanks for booking the call or thanks for filling out the form. Those kind of things, they're standardized and they don't need a lot of thought. But when you're like with the scripts and things like that, when I always read through them, make sure that they're okay. And I did have one guest who actually prompted me and said, hey, your questions are very AI, which is great because they were. And what I did was I instantly took action and made sure that there was a way of me being able to make sure that the questions are more human and more aligned to my tone and my voice and my style. So this was early on, but that's feedback coming through, and you can then use that feedback to make the right changes. Yeah, so I agree with you there. How do you feel AI could be used incorrectly in your industry?
So incorrectly. And here's the thing. I think that like the incident that happened with me, the AI had hallucinations. And so the person that prepared it did not check it very well. And I didn't check it very well because I relied on what the person gave me.
Mm,
So some people can use it intentionally to come up with
mm,
stuff, but I don't think that anyone in my field is using it intentionally. I just think that they are not as mindful
mm,
about checking it the way that they should check it. But if they were to use it nefariously, I just don't see that happening because when you have like licensed professionals who have something to lose, I don't see them doing that intentionally. I see more negligence than I do intentionality. And I see if you were not someone who was licensed, people using it to create legal documents, but not really having the background to correct those because AI will give you a template. It may merge something that it created, but it may not be what you need. It may be incomplete. It may not be consistent with your jurisdiction. So there's just so much oversight that I think is needed. And I don't know that so much somebody would intentionally do it the wrong way
yeah,
industry because of the
yeah,
implication.
yeah. What I was going to ask you before was, like, for example, the logo that you see for the Champion Mindset Collective, that was designed using AI. And that was back in 2023 when AI was still not that great at creating images and so on. Now, with logos and things like that, say the business goes under or a person passes away, what happens with the digital assets that have been created using AI?
So it depends. When you wrap your company up, there's a thing called winding down. And so when you wind down, you can either retire everything, you can do an asset transfer. And a lot of businesses do this. Like, for instance, if one furniture store is going out of business and selling all their assets to the person who's going to assume their physical space and purchase all of their inventory, you do an asset transfer, which they purchase everything. Well, when your business winds down, who are you giving the asset to? Are you giving it to the individual who owned the interest in the company? Are you selling it to another business? But it has to have a value on it. So during the lifetime of the business, your accountant should have a value. There should be a line item on your balance sheet, like, what is this worth?
Thank you for sharing that. Now, Sherrie, before we go into the quickfire questions, is there anything else you'd like to share that we've maybe not discussed today that you'd like to share with us?
Anthony, you've gotten all the good stuff from me. No, I'm so serious. I'm having such a good time. The only other thing that I would probably consider that we have not talked about already is that when you look at your exit planning, that you have more than one plan. And I know we talked about it generally, but you really do need to strategize, because there are some people that, for instance, may have a corporate job, and we didn't talk about this, but they may have a corporate job and they take their entire retirement to become an entrepreneur. What happens if the business fails? Can you minimally get back your initial investment so that you can retire comfortably? So that's just another consideration.
Mm. And tell us more about that. Like, what would you do in that situation?
Okay. So, like I said, it depends, because if you are reverse engineering your exit, then you should know from day zero how you get that money back. Your plan A to sell the business. So, in order to get that money back, the business has to be valued in those dollars. Like, for instance, if I put in $100,000 in 2000 and I plan on retiring in 2020, so I need to get back more than 100,000. Whatever the value of 100,000 is in 2020, that's what needs to be available. So you reverse engineer that for a sale, or, the sale of your interest, even for a bankruptcy, because there are ways that you can divert some of those to a different entity or a different asset class and get your money back, even with a bankruptcy. And that's why you got to have your investors. Yeah, you got to have your investors, because whether it's a business bankruptcy or personal bankruptcy, you can divert those funds so that the bankruptcy does not attach and you may have access to those assets later. So get your strategic advisors together to get that
Mm,
going for you.
yeah. Now, people who are listening to this may want to get in touch with you or learn more about what you do. How can they get in contact with you, and what have you got any offers or anything at the moment?
A book coming out October 2026. It's called Build the Moat First. And a lot of what we talked about today, I just have it in very plain terms. It is not a legal manual. A seventh grader can read it and hopefully enjoy it. So that's one thing, if you just want to learn more about the frameworks that I have, but also contact me on LinkedIn. I share content like this all the time. And if you just want to, DM me and ask me questions about certain things, that's not legal advice, but just how to get your business on track, I'd love to talk with you.
Mm, awesome. We'll put those links in the show notes, and there will be a dedicated episode page which will have your information, your links. There'll be an article, all the videos, and also a practical guide, which is a distilled down version of the article that people can and use that as a practical guide to help them in their business or in their personal life. Yeah, it's a 3-page PDF. So, yeah, if you're watching this, you can download this. Now, we're at the quickfire questions, which is 6 quick questions. And the first question for you, you can answer these in a short sentence or a single word. And the first question for you is, how do you define success, and has that definition evolved for you over time?
Time freedom, and yes, it has evolved over time.
How's it evolved?
The way that I look at it and the value that I place on planning my fun first, I plan
Mm,
family time first, then business, boom.
yeah. So like, you're building a business that goes revolves around your family and your lifestyle rather than the other way around.
Yes, it took years, but I'm there.
Yeah, nice. Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
My grandmother, my mother's mother, was one of the strongest women I've ever met in family, in running the farm, and just her love for her family.
What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
That it takes a village in business as well as a business personally, because some people think that they can go it alone in business, and I don't. I believe in strategic partnerships and the value that it adds.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Make more mistakes and make them quicker.
Yeah. Do you know what mistakes are?
Yeah. I was kind of shy about making like going places and not following rules. I had a well, it wasn't even Google Calendar back then, but I had a calendar that if it was not on the calendar, it did not happen. And so I would have been a lot more inflexible in some of my decisions very early
Yeah.
on before family.
Yeah. A boss of mine one day and manager, when I was sales repping, said to me, "Do you know what mistakes are?" I said, "Oh, they're bad things you make." That, he says, "No, no. You know, when you make a movie and you have mistakes, and then eventually you get the right take and you make a multi-million-dollar movie." So, yeah. He says, "Well, mistakes are not bad. You're learning from each one of those mistakes.
I love
It's
that
like a
answer.
misfire." Yeah.
I'm going to borrow that.
Yeah, yeah, go for it. What is one message that you'd like to share with the world?
Play big faster in life and business and to make more calculated decisions.
And what does it mean to you to be a champion and have a champion mindset?
It means being able to go boldly in my truth, let my no's be no and my yeses be yeses.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Scherrie. It's been a great chat. I've learned a lot myself from this. I feel like the Champion Mindset Collective is my university because I never went to university when I was younger. And this is where I get to learn from all the amazing people that I have on the show. So thank you so much. It's the biggest takeaway for me is that a champion founder doesn't just build fast, they build wisely. It's all about protecting more than just your business. To everyone listening, if this episode has got you thinking, please pass it on to someone who might benefit from this. And don't forget to subscribe to the Champion Mindset Collective on YouTube and everywhere else. You'll find the links in the show notes and also on the episode page on the Champion Mindset Collective. I will catch you next time. Thanks for being part of this amazing movement. And lastly, I just want to say you are loved, you are worthy, champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.